Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. We're covering Season 1 of Afterlife, starring Ricky Gervais, episodes 5 and 6. I'm your host, Rob. I have with me Professor Pixel and RDV. Good evening, gentlemen.
How's it going?
Hello.
Good. I, like you guys, are not showing right now. My enthusiasm level for this show is pretty high because what initially started off for me as a show that I was a little hesitant to get into, I found myself really liking these last two episodes of Afterlife, specifically episode 5. There's some funny elements. But I got to tell you, I feel like, get the show and what Ricky Gervais was trying to do with Afterlife until these two episodes. I think they were a nice little bow tie on season 1, putting everything together. Definitely looking forward to season 2, taking a look at it. But for me, overall, just to quickly give you my initial thoughts, really like the show. It's very enjoyable. There's a heartwarming element to it. There's some comedy to it. I'd mentioned before in the previous episodes that I had really kind of wish there's a bit more of that bitterness to it and all that. I think it would have given a bit more punch. That being said, I don't think it's making the episodes worse. I just think it's probably that British humor that we as Americans don't quite get. And I'm okay with that because, wow, what a way to finish. Let's go around the horn for initial thoughts. Pixel, what do you think of these two episodes?
I think you're absolutely right. With how the series has been going, I have enjoyed it. And it's been very kind of... It's not a very happy show. It's a funny show, but it's really hard to watch pretty much Ricky Gervais suffer through losing his wife. His wife has been dead for how long, and he just is done with life throughout most of the series. But episode 5 is a turning point because it's after after he gave the money to the drug addict to basically say, okay, if you want to overdose, here you go. And after he goes in to work, he starts out by threatening a kid with a hammer for bullying his nephew.
Yeah.
But he goes to work, and his boss, his brother-in-law, calls him in and says that I just heard that I can't remember his name, but the drug addict died.
Tony. It's what's his name is
Michael.
Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think it was Michael. But basically, that he died, and Tony pretty much shrugs it off, and he was like, I gave him the money. I gave him the money to get the drugs. And his brother-in-law looks at him and says, you didn't know that he would overdose. Please tell me that you didn't know that he was going to overdose. And he's basically point blank said, if you gave him that money knowing that he would kill himself, you're not allowed to see my son anymore. You're not allowed to see George. He actually steps up because at the beginning of this series, Tony says that you just let people walk all over you. That's all you do. You don't stand up for yourself. He was standing up for his son right there, though. And so Tony kind of goes back. He's a little shocked, and he's like, no, there's no way I could have known. None. And his brother-in-law just looks at him, and he's like, yeah, there's no way you could have known. Then we continue on with the episode, but that's really the highlight right there. That's a turning point because later on, he I think it's actually in episode 6, he actually talks about how he tried to not care, but there are things in life that you just care about and you can't help it. You can try to lie to yourself, but no matter what, you always care about something. And I just really felt like these two episodes were heartwarming. You're absolutely right, especially episode 6, but yeah. Those are mine.
I agree with you. I think it pivots. I think there's some interesting things to it too. So before I comment on something you brought up, I want to see where RDB feels about these two episodes.
Well, like I said, episode 5 alone is the better of the 2 episodes. 6 being the ending, it had the generic conclusion kind of wrap up.
I agree.
Episode 5, the comedy is just great in this. Never accept bread from anybody. I'm just saying that. If it's homemade bread, don't eat it. As far as him, he said this is the conflict of his actions. Episode 5 is where he basically like realizes that the reason that Tony gave the guy the drugs, even though he knew the back of his mind subconsciously, he knew the guy was going to overdose. He's a man that basically wants to be dead. He wants to be gone from the world. And that's the reason why he gave him the drugs. And then towards the end of the episode, he realizes after talking to the lady in the cemetery, he's like that. Yeah, there are more. What he did was wrong. He realized and there are consequences. And like I said, there is a brighter. We were only here for a short amount of time, but the amount of time we're here, we should make the best of it. Why should we make everyone else's life miserable? That's not fair. Just because something happened to you, why do you get to be selfish and and stuff? And and it kind of he gets him thinking more with this everything, especially with what's going on. The thoughts that he can never be around his son, or not his son, but his nephew George, because his consequence actions. He starts to change a little bit. And, like I said, when Sandy gets emotional at the office, the end there, that's basically where he basically realizes, you know what, I gotta change. I can't be like this. This is not helping me. It's not helping anyone around me. I'm just making everything worse. And she basically, she starts breaking down. She, Sandy, the new hire, she's like, I just want you to be happy. He's crying. He's like, don't cry. He's like, it's breaking our heart and everything. And then after that, he confronts the sex worker. Basically, and basically decides I got to comfort her because I'm the reason why her friend's dead. Cause remember, she was friends with the paper guy.
Yeah,
she was doing out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he comforts her, but I said like this series, this episode here, episode 5 was like this. It's like the not really the climax, but it's right there. It's basically where he realizes that I'm a shit person. What I did, at the right moment, I shouldn't have done it, but now realizing what he did, and how it affected other people, affected the sex worker, it caused her more grief, and it almost cost him his relationship with his brother-in-law and his nephew. He realized that hey, what I've been doing this whole entire time is not good. But the funny part about this, because that's the serious part. The funny part is like I said, it's always when they have to go and meet someone who wants to be the paper. Rice puddings are gross by themselves, but when this woman says she uses her breast milk to make the rice puddings, and then she uses her vaginal yeast to make bread, you can see he's literally ready to throw up right there in the spot. He's like, and then he turns and he sees the picture, the photo guy, just eating the rice, so good, and he's like, and I'm right there with him, like you really. It's like, and the guy is like using his fingers too, and then the spoon. He's just and he's like, I'm like, wow, they really play. That guy is stereotypical, but he's really playing his part well. He's being the grossest, the slob and everything, where he's like the sane person. And like I said, the episode 5 to me was a turnaround point for Tony, because episode 6, he starts going visiting his dad and starts actually caring about trying to comfort his dad and all that stuff. He just has he goes and talks to the instead of he gives the kid he realizes that the kid was that other kid, the one that was being bullied, and after he gives a bike. And it turns around, that kid shares itself, and all of a sudden, really, and that basically solves everything. Now in real life, if someone dropped the bike off, that kid wouldn't get the bike. The school's like, yeah, we're confiscating this. We don't know who it's from. But like I said, the main focus point of this episode is episode 5 is always gonna be the better one. Of 6 is kind of like the neat wrap up to the next season or next series. But overall, I enjoyed them both.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think 6 to me is almost really a blow off episode, even though there's there's scenes in there. But in 5, I think the whole show to me is basically one particular theme, and if we just use the word selfishness, we're exploring whether that's good or bad. I like the fact that despite, he was in grief with his wife dying, he's grieving because he cared for her. So it's not like he has an empty heart. You can definitely argue by today's standards that the way he treated people may have been kind of boorish or whatever. However, since we only see him in this state of mind, we don't know how he is with them. And since he's been with this company for a long time, you assume that he has some basic social skills and gets along. You're not seeing other people suffer. So I think you could argue very well that, well, how well do those people like him? How good of human beings are they to him? So it doesn't give him a right to be a jerk per se, but I found it refreshing that he felt unburdened by having to deal with society's little niceties and all that, specifically, being summed up by, to me, the real sharp interactions with the male character. But when we talk about selfishness, when they're having their little conversations at the graveyard, Anna has a nice little line about, men who plant trees knowing they'll never get to see the shade in them, or, real type of human being sort of thing, ad-libbing. It's a nice little voice of reason to it. Part of me goes, oh, is she a ghost and not really there? Like the voice of consciousness, a reason for him, emotionally speaking. But I just go, I almost don't know if I don't like the fact that because everybody's saying you need to be good, you need to treat everybody nice because you only have one life. If that's not, to me, that makes me feel like it's almost manipulation on everybody else's part. Like everybody's saying to somebody that gets all pissed off, hey, just chill out, bro, just get along to get along. And if the show wanted to be a bit darker, which initially it seemed it was going to be that way, since they are dealing with suicide in a lot of the early episodes, I thought that would have been an interesting way to go. But obviously, based on the pivot here in episode 5, going into 6 with his nice eulogy and everything, it's like, okay, this is going to be those happy-go-lucky things where the suicide's, to me, not going to be that big of a point to really dig into, but in a way it kind of cheapens, I guess, the thought of it. And I can see where some people might be upset by the nature of the topic in it, but I'm not going to complain because, to your point, and I use the breast milk as an example here, they can really turn on a dime here really quick when they go through a scene where you're like, something horrific happens. So how do we make that seem really big? Well, we'll cut to them, with this woman making yeast bread from her. And that kind of shock is what I think is the British kind of mentality that is American. And I go, I get it. So, yeah, good show. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good, but it's definitely a positive show, whereas initially I think it was going to be more of a brooding type show.
Episode 6 didn't have his key points in it. Like I said, him turning around and obviously confirming, he has a conversation with his workers. I believe it was Kath. And it talks about, she's talking about how can you believe in God, and stuff like that. But he tells that life is worth living, even if you're an atheist. He also makes an effort, like I said, as doing his father, providing more emotional moment. His dad, briefly remembers him as being 7 years old. So you get kind of that. He fires his therapist. Finally, but this is a good thing though, because this is a really big thing plot device here. Continuation. His therapist and retaliation reveals that his brother-in-law his marriage is failing.
Oh yeah, that seemed really obvious. Even
so this also realizes that, remember, in episode 4, after the taxi ride, they got home from the comedy club, he says, what, I have my own shit going on at home, so I deal with. So now we know what that was, So yeah, obviously his marriage is must be crumbling or something, and dealing with his brother-in-law. So he apologizes to him. He apologized to his brother after this, brother-in-law, and this basically said, "I'm sorry, for being a dick, and I'm here if you need anything, and stuff." And yeah, like I said, it was a nice cleanup, But like I said, that with the series 2. I'm not going to give you spoilers on that, but I'm just saying they set it up for series 2. That's one possible thing, talking about his brother-in-law's marriage, crumbling.
Right.
Him, the nurse, basically the nurse, him, and they're more on better terms now. He's being nice to his father. She kind of recognizes this. She's getting a little, what? He actually is a nice guy when he wants to be a nice guy.
Jump over.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be gentleman-like, okay? But the last episode, like I said, it's basically just it's a neat wrap up. 30 minutes. It felt like it was like 10 minutes because it basically, aside from all the baby Hitler, the gag,
baby Hitler.
there wasn't really much to wrap up, So if anything, after watching the last episode, this really made me want to jump in and watch the second season, because once again, they're 30-minute episodes and there's only 6, I believe. So I would say if you're hooked by this, by episode 6 doesn't make you want to go watch it, I'd probably say give it a try. But I mean, but that's why, if you're still watching, if you keep your episode 6 and you don't want to watch it again, I understand, because not everything's for everybody. Some people just feel like, I'm just watching it just to watch it. So I actually enjoyed the whole entire show through. Like I said, Ricky Gervais, he wrote most of this. I don't know if any of this is based off any personal stories. I mean, he maybe had with friends. Maybe he knew somebody like this. I don't know if it's, or if it's just made up, But I've never seen an American show like this, though. They do it, but they fail at it.
Yeah. And it's quick enough where, like, to me, it took me to episode 5 to go, okay, I get what the show is. And sometimes it takes that. And if you looked at it in terms of just pure viewing time, that would be about 2 or 3 episodes, which sometimes in the 8 or 10 episode thing that's on TV, or 13, it takes you 3 or 4 to get into the flow of it or to like it. So I agree with you. I think those final thoughts of yours are pretty well said, because it kind of explains how I felt about it. So,
well, yeah, you see in the show, it's a 1 episode thing and then it's done. And all of a sudden he's back to being normal. Like, what?
Yeah. All right, Pixel, wrapping things up here. Final thoughts overall on Afterlife.
I kind of agree. I feel like episode 6, what was absolutely important, that whole rant about why life is worth living, it really builds you up. It's like a aha moment for him, and he's like, I have to go, and he goes to his friend's funeral, but misses it. But it's still,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's still this show. I'm glad that it did take this turn. I don't know about watching the second season, because I felt content with the end of this season. Which is a rare feeling. With most television shows, there's always something more to build off of. And I'm wondering where it could go, because it's almost like Ebenezer Scrooge in Christmas Carol. He wakes up the next morning, I haven't missed it. And he goes onward. We don't get the sequel to A Christmas Carol, Scrooge's Day Off or something.
Well, I'll agree with you that they both have one thing in common, and that's that they're extremely manipulative of the main character here, going for the nice ending too. And I just think the Afterlife show is absolutely a hell of a lot more entertaining than the rubbish that is A Christmas Carol. And yes, I am saying that to trigger you a little bit, but it's a good comparison, and one that I think, to your point, that even RDB actually mentioned, that you don't get a lot of this on American TV. So I think, both comments are well spot on. Yeah, it takes a few episodes maybe to get into the swing of it, maybe at episode 5 or 6, like for someone like me, or maybe more Americans that aren't used to British humor. But it's definitely a show worth watching. It's very tight. It's very lighthearted. But overall, they do such a good enough job with it, even dealing with the heavy matter, to make it positive, life-affirming, and that's it. I can see where it leads you to a sense of fulfillment for season 1. So I will be watching season 2. We'll see whether or not we review that a little bit later here on the Xtreme Movie Show, specifically tonight's episode of Xtreme TV. But overall, great show. Glad we watched it. Really entertained by it. I want to thank you guys for showing up too. I'd like to thank everybody listening to it as well, as far as retweeting, going out, letting us know what you think about it too. We've had some recent people across the pond from the UK letting us know what they think about it. And that's always interesting too, to get a different perspective, globally speaking. So for Professor Pixel, for RDB, myself, Rob, I'd like to say thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Have a good night.
Good night.